Hello, this is Sergio Pallottelli, flutist. I'm based in Houston, Italian. I am the flute faculty at the Zodiac Festival, and it is so sad to think that in a few days we would all be gathering in the mountains of France for 2 weeks of magic to happen truly. Making chamber music, sharing life, um, talking shop, having brosé, and all the wonderful things that have come to be normality for us in the first 2 weeks of July. Um, I'm going to talk today online, of course, is the 220 version of this, about who I am as a flutist and what I tend to stress in lessons and the things I look for as a flutist, as a musician, when I work with young and upcoming artists. Um, and to just give you a little brief description of what it would be like for you to spend 2 weeks in the flute studio at Zodiac, and we hope we see you next year back to normal. Um, at the base of my at the base of my teaching and of my philosophy of what flute is to me and what music is to me, I would say that the word curiosity is number one, because it goes in many directions. That word, it can go, well, it does go um, in the direction of technique and sound and timbre. So if we are strictly talking about the kind of sound we are looking for as flutists, being curious is a massive element in guiding our course of study and our exploring different possibilities. Curiosity also is fundamental in the knowledge of the repertoire that we are in possession of. What does that mean, in possession of? It means the repertoire that exists already for our instrument, that is original. But the curiosity pushes our boundaries. It pushes the boundaries of how we think of traditional pieces that are staples of our repertoire, how we can keep them fresh, how we can make them more current, and it pushes our boundaries of how we think of what is possible. And for those who know me, I am very much into the world of transcribing repertoire from other instruments for our own. And that stemmed from deep curiosity on my side, since I can remember being at a concert and hearing a cellist play a phenomenal piece. I'm thinking of the Haydn Cello Concerto. I'm thinking of hearing Bartoli sing a wonderful aria that I just instantly would be thinking, I wonder how this would work on flute, and so on and so on. Whether we actually study them or play these pieces that spark our interest on our instrument is not even so much the issue. The issue is that we are expanding our knowledge of um, of music and what we know and what we are able to recognize. It'll refine our sense of style. It'll refine our sense of depth, of understanding how to collaborate, how to shape a piece. If we are just more immersed in the study and in the appreciation and in the love of music from not just our own instrument. The basic elements to work on so to speak, in a lesson are, I'll start with the basics. Repertoire, meaning etudes, exercises, scales, pieces that reflect the kind of exercise we're working on in a particular week or in a particular month or in a particular period of our lives. How does our technical study influence the choice of repertoire for the concert stage, and vice versa? How does what we set our heart and our mind out to play for a particular program or for a particular concert season, how does that affect the kind of technique we will be practicing? Do they always go hand in hand, or is it always sort of made for the situation, this relationship between the repertoire and the technical study? I think they always go hand in hand because the technique is nothing more than our language to be able to picture and present any kind of repertoire that we feel like or think we have to present. Within the technique study, I'm going to just brush on the obvious. Of course, finger technique. That is the most obvious thing. To me, it is also the most trainable thing in technique, given that one keeps in mind perfect position, not stress in the body, open, so that our finger agility can be maximized and just brought to the top level for each one of us. But within technique, there are things that I am just absolutely relentless about for myself, but my students know this, how annoying I can be about the small details. But tone practice, tone searching, it's not so much for me about spending 3-4 hours a day playing long tones so that we are able to play a clean tone that is fairly in tune and that is open and all that. That is all great, and we must do it, and I do it. But we must go beyond that. What kind of sound would you like to be yours and only yours? There's a fine line about, do we do this for ourselves or do we do it for somebody? But what kind of sound would you like to be known for? Or what kind of sound would you like to know is yours and only yours? And how close to that can you get to? I know that there's something in my heart and in my intellect that I want to reach, and I hope I reach it. But that's how we are driven to explore different embouchures, different opennesses, different kind of colors that we can create based on the idea of where we want our sound to be and where we want it to come from and how we want it to sing, how we want it to bloom. So it's basically putting intellect and putting thought and reason behind the physical fact of doing long tones and all the studies that are unbelievably good for us, but we can't do them blindly. We can't do them just to train a muscle. We have to give purpose and intent to it. Directly related to tone is color, and directly related to color is phrasing. I personally have found over the years that connecting technically difficult passages with a sense of phrasing, even in a micro little snippet, one measure or less than a measure of something that is technically very difficult that we cannot play or that always causes us trouble, break those notes apart Are they 6 notes, 7 notes, 11 notes, 3 notes that are the technical problem? Figure out the melodic and harmonic content of how you want to phrase those absolutely difficult notes. So it brings a whole new meaning to well, practice it slowly so that you can play it. You practice it slowly so that you can play it to address your muscle memory and to sort of, by repetition, slowly train your fingers to do something. But the intellectual part behind understanding how those 3 notes form a melody, or if there's a harmonic structure under those 3 notes, if there's a sense to it, that you're going to change color right in the difficult passage because there's a meaning to those notes. It's irrelevant that those 3 notes or 6 notes or 12 notes happen to be difficult on your instrument. So phrasing, the attention to phrasing, not just in how we're shaping the whole story of a ready, technically learned piece, but thinking about phrasing to solve technical problems is something I address very much. Articulation, I'm mentioning it third or fourth of all my points, but certainly not. It deserves first place. They all deserve first place. But articulation, I just resort to listening to string players, of course, who have, in my opinion, just so many ways of articulating from the string, on the string, the amount of pressure they put on a string, the place in relation to the bridge, where they play, how the bow hair strikes the string, and all that. All of that for us is the air and the has to do with the air and the embouchure and understanding how it works. So understanding that we all have different kinds of embouchures that work in different situations for different people is key. The air speed is something that it can be neglected in wind study, which I think about a lot and I teach very, very strongly. Related to air speed and embouchure is understanding and finding the point of contact of that air column with the edge of our embouchure hole on our head joint. Understanding where that point of contact is to create sound, and what the air direction and the air speed needs to be for it to be really effective. And how does that speed need to vary, the pressure and the speed, how does it need to vary to create different colors, to create different dynamics, to stay in tune? How does it need to vary while maintaining an open throat and a relaxed posture with a fantastic breathing apparatus and breathing technique that doesn't create tension? How do we create the variety in the front to manipulate the speed of the air? The speed of the air cannot be mistaken with the amount of air. So that's a very complicated concept, but especially for us flute players who, I call it, an open instrument. We have a lot of dispersion. Is it 50%, I think, of our air gets dispersed, and the other goes in the instrument, if you will, or at least cuts on the edge to create sound. But understanding the ratio of that and the amounts of air that we have to use in relation to the speed and the air. In my opinion, the speed cannot drop, the speed/pressure cannot drop below a certain line, and that line is different for all of us. However, figuring out how to use very little amount of air, though keeping the speed up, is key for finding focus and clarity in our sound. And of course, that is done by understanding embouchure openness, vowels, tongue position, articulation, and minimizing motion and maximizing flexibility to create all the effects we need. This is sort of like a crash course on what I stress and what I like to talk about. In musical terms, my go-to daily is the world of singing, so the vocal world, and I try to imitate because I like it, because I love opera, I love folk singing, I love jazz singing, I love the production of music with the human voice. Of course, it's we hear it all the time. We're a singing instrument. We must imitate the singing of the voice and all that. But more so, in my playing at least, I really love to get even closer to the speaking quality of the human voice. When we sing, it's amazing, and I totally agree with trying to go and think in those terms. But when we sing, we are doing something that is artificial. At least it's more artificial than when we speak. When we speak, we're truly communicating. And some languages are more singing languages, some aren't. But when we speak, there are really all these inflections. And it's something interesting to think about. Don't just try to imitate in your phrasing how it would be done by a singer. Imitate it if you were actually always, constantly, every measure of what you're doing, saying something to a person. What is the mood? How does the tone dip because the sentence is ending? Because you're talking, not because you're singing. Because of what you're saying, because of the importance of what you're saying, because of the importance of who you're talking to, or how you feel that day about what you're going to say. How long have you planned to say what you're going to say to that particular person that day? This all affects our musical phrasing. So I like to get really close to the speech part of vocal production, even more so than the singing part of vocal production. Now, of course, when we talk vibrato and those kind of things that come for a wind player from inside, singing is where I go. And when we talk vibrato, of course, I really learn so much from string players as well. Because for them it's an external action. It's outside of their body on the string, and every time they vibrate, they must think how fast they're going to move their finger, when they're going to do it, and why, and there is some kind of a visual element to it too. We can see it. For wind player and singers, we cannot. So in a way, it's more natural because once we learn it, it's in our body. But at least for me, and I'm not going to put everyone in there, but at least for me, sometimes I tend, especially in my early years, it was just happening. I didn't give it much thought because vibrato just happened. Playing with the speed of vibrato and the width of it, these are all obvious things, and the absence of it with intelligent choice of when to do that and how to slide in and out is something that, to me, as a wind player, is less natural than perhaps it would be for a string player. And I'm not a string player, but I noticed that I'm on the string, I gotta vibrate. They have to do it. And I'm doing this horribly because I'm not a string player, but that's my 2 cents on that. Intellectually, we need to I like to stress and push my students into the knowledge of what they are preparing. So many times I have students that come to me saying, I'm signing up for this competition. It's in 6 months, And the list is gigantic. It's 3 concertos, 5 sonatas, a contemporary piece, 2 Baroque pieces, a commissioned piece. It's all stuff I've done. I can learn this, and yeah, I know the concerto I've never done, but I can learn it in a month. Music is a really slow process to do well. Anyone at high level can learn anything in a week, in 2 weeks, even less. I have no doubt about that. But can you be somebody who plays in a way that touches souls? That's a slow process. And if a lifetime is what you have, that's barely enough. That's just barely enough. So it's not a really grim picture. It's just a beautifully wonderful situation that makes what we do so special. Of course, we're in situations where we have to quickly learn something and try to present it as well as we can. But I like to stress this part. And I don't mean knowing the composer's dates, and of course, yes, knowing what context they live in, whether they're contemporary or from the past, and knowing the style, but it's getting to know why you love this piece, why you chose it, and if it's something that you're required to play, but how can you make it yours? And that comes from reading, from listening, from talking to colleagues, from collaborating, from trying, from being curious, from expanding your horizons, to looking at art from the same period, to reading poetry, to cooking food from the country of the piece that the composer's from. I mean, it can just be anything. But it's deepening the knowledge of our preparation of any piece of repertoire. It takes a lot of time to do even one piece really well. So just think about that. Don't be in a hurry. I know this world moves so fast, but think. One time I played Mozart Concerto in masterclass. I was 18 years old. I played really well, and the teacher loved it and said, what you need to do is think about this. You're playing the notes, you're playing this well, it's a nice tone, the style is correct, everything's fine, but you're not sure why you're doing it this way. You haven't thought about anything. And I was just devastated. What does he mean? I've prepared so long for this, and now 20, 30 years later, I'm realizing what that person was saying. I'm going to leave you with a sentimental and a little bit cliche thought. Last but not least, don't ever put in second place the thing that makes you be a musician and a flutist in the first place. Pardon my pun. The love for it. Don't ever, not for one day, think or forget, not think, don't ever forget that you decided to do this because you loved it, because you happen to be good at it, because we're flutists, right? So because flute spoke to you, you had a friend that played it and you wanted to do it too. You had a teacher push you into it. Flute is what you were handed, but it happened to take part of your life over and more, and for you to decide to go into music as a major, keep into music, keep studying, keep exploring, and keep being a musician. And now you're there and you're a musician. Don't ever let it be something that at some point it's just something that you're good at, and it happens to be something that you make a living in this pandemic. I've had a lot of conversations with dear friends and colleagues that have really slowed down the practice and the curiosity. I understand we all have different personalities, and we we fall into depressions, and when goals aren't there, we have real hard time working. Um, my thing, that wasn't a problem for me. This pandemic, the pandemic for me was problematic because I'm a people's person and I want to go to places. But in terms of my instrument, I hate it when one day goes by and I don't play. I force a day or two every now and then of me not playing for the physical and the mental freedom and just clearing out of things. But but it's not like, oh God, we're locked up at home and, well, I have 3 months. You know what? I'm just not going to practice. No, I want to practice. It's like I want to breathe. Like I like to eat certain things, and I mean, it's my life. I want to play. So don't ever forget why you're a musician in the first place. Your love for music should always show, whether you're playing a scale and whether you're playing your most amazing rendition of your absolutely key piece in your life. It should always come through that you're a musician for a reason, because it was your calling. It's too difficult if not. I mean, we'd be crazy if we didn't do this kind of thing. Anyway, this is a long video already. I'm available through the Zodiac website. This is just a 26-minute video of what Sergio thinks about music and flute. It's all crammed together. I'm talking to everyone and nobody because it's just a screen. So as passionate as I am, it's probably really dorky and goofy. But reach out to me, reach out to the festival, and we look forward to seeing you next year. Please come see us, because there's no place on earth like Zodiac Festival. Love.